Hello, welcome back to Fresh Food Therapy. You know, a lot of people have anxiety when they have people coming over to their house. And understandably, I mean, they're gonna be judging. So today what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some of that anxiety and some of that stress off by giving them something to snack on. This episode is called Get Stuffed. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna teach you how to make some hors d'oeuvres and some appetizers that are sure to please and will impress your guests. Are you ready? What I'm about to make for you is called pinwheels. And what they are really is just a flour tortilla wrapped up with a little bit of meat and a little bit of vegetable and a binding agent, which is going to be cream cheese mixed with a little bit of horseradish for flavor and kick. Super simple and can be made out of something that you probably have sitting in your refrigerator at home. So what we're going to do is, let's say for the sake of argument, we have 10 guests coming over and you only have a few minutes to prepare. All you have to do is grab a package of Philadelphia cream cheese, place it into a bowl. If you want, you can put it into the microwave to soften it a little bit, but it's pretty soft to begin with. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a little bit of fresh prepared horseradish. All we're gonna do is add about a teaspoon, because you'll be able to go back and add more to taste in just a minute. What we're gonna do now is we're just gonna mix it together until it's creamy and smooth. Once it's blended relatively smoothly, we're ready to go. The 1 teaspoon of horseradish should be enough to give it a little bit of flavor, but not much heat. If you like it a little bit spicier, have at it. Add more horseradish until it comes to taste. But what you're gonna wanna do is, before you start spreading, just take a little pinch with your finger and see whether it's the right taste for you. It's very, very mild. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit more horseradish to my liking. That's about 1.5 tablespoons. What you're gonna do is you're literally gonna take a tortilla, place it down. You're gonna take about 2 tablespoons of the cream cheese and you're gonna spread it over the top third of the tortilla. You're gonna take some fresh spinach that's been washed and has been dried, and you're gonna place it just under where you put the cream cheese. That should cover about another third. And then what you're gonna do is, I have 3 different types of meat here that I got from my deli counter. I have honey ham, I have seared and seasoned roast beef, and I have a Cajun style turkey breast. What you're gonna do is take whatever meat you'd like to use, and lay down 2 slices like so that a little bit of the spinach is showing. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold over the tortilla and you're gonna begin to roll. And the cream cheese and horseradish should seal it up and hold it in place. You've just completed your first pinwheel. We're gonna do that as many times as you want. A good way to measure this is to assume that there'll be 7 to 8 pieces per roll, and you want about 4 pieces per person. So 1 roll for every 2 people that are coming. This time, we're gonna use a little bit of the honey ham. And again, fold. And then just very carefully roll. And one more time, just for effect. It's not an exact science. It's kind of more of an art. But I think once you do it, you'll realize that there's a lot of space for you to design your very own creations. You also have the ability to turn these into vegetarian if you want, by using shredded vegetables or using a little bit of bean dip. There's a million ways to make this, but once you have the basic down, that's where you can add your own creativity. So we're gonna fold and we're gonna roll. Now the nice thing is that if you have a little bit of lead time and you're not needing to serve these right away, you can make them the day before and put them in the refrigerator wrapped and then cut them right before you're going to use them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to plate them and I'll slice them up and show you how to serve. Now you have your pinwheels and you're ready to actually cut them. So what we're going to do is we're going to take them and we're going to cut them on an angle, or not on an angle, but a little ways in. This is not waste, this is snack for the chef. You want to cut them about 3/4 of an inch. And you want to go slow and be very, very careful because you don't want them to fall apart. And again, when you come to the end and it starts to unravel, put that to the side. It's a snack for you, you deserve it. And there you have it, pinwheels for your pleasure. There should be enough for about 6 people altogether. You have 3 different flavors. They look beautiful to the eye, but they also will really satisfy the taste buds. What we're going to do next is we're going to teach you my own recipe for stuffed mushrooms, and I think you're going to be very impressed. Okay, so my mushrooms are one of my favorite appetizers, and it usually causes people to ask me for the recipe after they start chewing the first one. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some button, just white mushrooms. We're going to take a medium yellow onion. We're going to have some breadcrumbs. We're going to have some Kraft Parmesan and Romano mixed, and literally that's all you're going to need, with just a little bit of chicken stock to moisten the breadcrumb mixture up. So what we're going to do is, to prep, we're going to clean the mushrooms first. You can brush them to clean them, or run them under water if you'd like. But all we're really going to do is we're going to trim just the edge of the stem off. That's the only part of the mushroom we're not going to use. A good measure, if you're making mushrooms, is to assume that everyone is going to have at least 2. So if you do 3 mushrooms per person that you're going to have, that's usually enough. Now that you've done that, we're going to separate the stems from the caps. And it's really, really simple. If you just wiggle it to the side, it should come out clean and should leave a beautiful little reservoir for you to fill with breadcrumbs. Do not throw away the stems. We're going to be using them. Now that the mushrooms are cleaned, what we're going to do is we're going to put them to the side for stuffing later. Now this next part goes pretty fast. So what we're going to do is you're going to look at the amount of stems that you have, and you're going to use about an equal volume of onion. In this case, we have a medium-sized onion, and it looks like we'll only have to use about half of it. So we're going to prep it like we normally do. Well, first, we're going to put a little bit of oil in the pan and get it warmed. Using just normal vegetable oil, you're going to coat the bottom of the pan with a thin layer of oil, and then we're going to put it on a medium heat. Okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to clean the onion like you normally do, which is cutting off the top, cutting off the bottom, and then peeling off the layer we're not going to use in the cooking process. We're going to cut it in half, and then for this one we're going to mince it pretty fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to slice it very thinly. Lay it on its side, and then we're going to cut up and down about the same thin slice. When it gets to the end, just cut a little slower because it's apt to do what it just did, which is slide. So now we're going to just make sure that it's minced finely. And now that it's finely minced, what we're going to do is we're going to put it into the oil and start it sauteing. Now that the onions are sauteing, take a deep breath, you have time. It's going to take a while for them to caramelize. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the stems and we're going to mince them too. And we're going to mince them small just like we did the onions. We're almost there. We're just going to mince them a little bit finer. One more time through should be perfect. Now we're going to get a spoon and stir the onions to see where they're going to be, and then we'll add the mushrooms. So now the onions have started to caramelize. They're just lightly brown around the edges, and that's the time that we want to put the mushroom stems in. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick them up and add them to the onion mixture. And we're going to then mix it with the onions so that they're evenly coated. It's going to take a few minutes for them to soften and begin to let off moisture, so we're going to let it saute for just a moment or two. While we're doing that, we have a half of an onion, and I have to be honest. How many times has a half onion gone into the refrigerator only to die a lonely death? This onion wants to be something. So what we're going to do is we're going to mince it up the exact same way as we did the onions for the stuffed mushroom, but we're going to set it to the side for something special in just a little bit. We're going to turn the mushrooms and the onions to make sure that it's still cooking evenly. This is actually going to start looking like a little bit of a poultice, like almost like an oatmeal. That is completely fine. That's the way it's supposed to be. It's going to be a few moments until the mushrooms and the onions are ready to go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to build the mix for the breadcrumbs. We're going to take Progresso Italian style breadcrumbs, and we're going to look at the amount of onions and mushrooms that we have, and we're going to use about an equal volume of breadcrumbs. And then with the breadcrumbs, you're going to add about a third of the volume of the breadcrumbs with Parmesan and Romano cheese. It's not an exact science, and you're going to have to find what tastes best to you, but this is a pretty standard mix for what I do. You're going to mix the breadcrumbs and the cheese together, and once it's evenly mixed, we'll be ready to add the onions and the mushrooms. Now that the onions and the mushrooms are right where we like them, we're going to take them off of the heat and we're going to add them to the breadcrumb mixture. At this point in time, you're just going to roughly mix them together so that the mushrooms and the onions mix kind of evenly with the breadcrumbs. It's going to be dry and crumbly. That's the way it's supposed to be. Once they're evenly mixed, the next step is to add a little bit of chicken stock or chicken broth to moisten it. If you're vegetarian, it's totally fine to use a vegetable stock or a vegetable broth. It won't upset the flavor or the texture of the mushrooms at all. It just allows you to respect your own dietary requirements. So now that the onions and the mushroom stems and the breadcrumbs and the cheese are together, we're going to add a little bit of chicken broth, a little at a time, because we just want to get the whole mix nice and moist, but we don't want it to be watery. So I added about a third of the can, and it still needs a little bit more. So we're going to add just a little bit more of the chicken stock, and we should have the stuffing perfect, ready to start stuffing the mushrooms. So now we have the mix ready to go. It will be warm, but it's not going to be hot. It should be easy to handle. And we're going to take the mushroom caps and we're going to put just enough in to top them. And then lightly press down. You don't want to pack them too tight, because if you pack them really, really tight, they won't be soft and tender when you go to eat them. The less you play with it, the better the outcome's going to be. Now, this is a rather humorous tip. Don't have any plans to do anything until you have stuffed all the mushrooms, because you're going to get stuff on your fingers and it's going to stick. And no matter how careful you are, if you have to go answer the phone, if you have to do anything at all other than just finish stuffing the mushrooms, you're going to make a little bit of a mess. It goes pretty quick, so you don't have to set aside a large portion of your life for this. But it is always good to know the risks before you go in. So remember when we were talking about the onion that was going to go to waste? Okay, every ingredient wants to end up being something. So we're going to take those onions that we're going to be put back into the refrigerator, and we're going to start them frying much in the same way we started the stuffed mushrooms. But we're not making stuffed mushrooms right now. Once you've coated the pan, we're going to take the onions and we're going to get them starting to saute. All right, so what we're going to be making is frittata, which is basically like a miniature quiche without crust, or kind of like simple omelet that you didn't actually have to fold. So we had some leftover asparagus in the fridge, and I wasn't about to waste this beautiful vegetable. So what we're going to do is we're going to mince up the asparagus and we're going to fry it with the onions. We're going to give the onions a chance to start to caramelize a little bit. But literally, if you have a couple of eggs in the refrigerator and you have leftover vegetables, leftover meats, anything at all, in just a few seconds, you can whip together frittata and you can literally make yourself very happy, or guests very, very happy. What we're going to do is, once the onions caramelize, we're going to add the asparagus in. We're going to cook it just to the point where it becomes tender, and then the magic begins. Now that the onions are starting to caramelize and turn a beautiful little brown around the edges, it's ready for us to add in the asparagus. So we're going to grab the asparagus and add it to the onions. And then we're going to mix it so that it coats with oil and they start to cook evenly. Now it's going to take a few moments for that to cook. So while we're doing that, we're going to prep the next phase. What you're going to do is you're going to take a cupcake tin and you're going to ham it well. Now for every cup, you're going to use 1 egg. So this has 12 spaces and we're going to make all 12 of them. So we're going to take 6 eggs. And because we want our frittata to be light and fluffy, we're going to add a little bit of water to the eggs. Adding water to eggs makes them a little fluffier and adds a little bit of volume to it. We're going to scramble them well. And we're going to add a nice little portion of fresh Parmesan and Romano cheese. This will add salt and flavor to the dish. I would use about 1/2 cup for 6 eggs. And just very carefully scramble in the cheese, fold it in evenly. And then we're gonna turn the asparagus and the onions again just to make sure that they're cooking evenly. And then we only have about 2 or 3 more minutes until the asparagus is done. Asparagus is tender and the onions are nice and caramelized. We're gonna take them off the heat and we're gonna put them into the panned cups, about just a tablespoon per. It should just cover the bottoms of each of the cups. If there's any that's left over, go ahead and just be a little bit more generous with the cups that are less full. Now that we're ready, we're gonna just re-scramble real quick to get all the eggs and the cheese mixed together well again, and then we're gonna just pour literally just enough to cover what's in the cup. Almost the perfect amount. Now that we have the asparagus frittata complete and the mushrooms complete, we can actually put them into the oven together at the exact same time. Now that we have the frittata and the stuffed mushrooms ready to be put into the oven, we're going to put them in the oven preheated to 350 degrees for approximately 15 to 20 minutes until the frittata are cooked all the way through and starting to brown a little bit on the top, and the mushrooms are cooked all the way through and look moist and tender. So the last appetizer that we're going to be doing for you is the stuffed Anaheim peppers. And they're really easy, but there's a few steps involved. So I'm gonna walk you through it real quick. What we're gonna do is we're going to cut the tops off the peppers and clean out the pith and the seeds. And then, once it's completely cleaned out, we're gonna rinse it with balsamic reduction. Once we've rinsed it with balsamic reduction, we're going to mix breadcrumbs and cheese together, pack it just loosely and lightly, and then we're gonna add water to the balsamic reduction that we were using, and then sprinkle it into the breadcrumbs to moisten them a little bit. We're then going to fry them just to the point that they're softened, and then we're gonna bake them until they're done. And then you'll have a really impressive appetizer. Are you ready? Okay, so Anaheim peppers are not very hot, but they do have a little bit of heat. So if you're sensitive, be very, very careful because the seeds and the pith may cause you to cough a little bit. You may actually be coughing during the process. So we're going to take the peppers. Once they've been washed and cleaned, we're just going to cut the tops off, leaving the seeds and the pith intact. And now we're going to take a chopstick, probably one from the last time you had Chinese delivery. And we're going to use the chopstick to actually clean the seeds and the pith from the inside of the pepper. If you're careful, there's no rush needed. If you're careful, you may be able to get the majority of it out without losing all the seeds on the inside. You want to make sure that all the seeds and the pith are out. So go ahead and look inside, and you may see that there's a vein of pith and seeds still in. You're going to use the chopstick, push it down, and break that up, and empty out the seeds and the pith. It should leave basically a nice big open cavity on the inside of the Anaheim pepper. We're going to do that for all the peppers. And once the peppers are cleaned out in entirety, we will be ready to start by rinsing them out with a little bit of balsamic. So what we're going to do is we're going to open the balsamic reduction, and over a bowl we're going to pour just enough to be able to fill it about halfway, and we're going to rinse it so that it coats the entire inside. Once you've done that, pour So pour it into another pepper and repeat. Make sure you're coating the entire inside and then rinse it out. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the breadcrumb mixture. And for the breadcrumb mixture, we're gonna take the breadcrumbs, the Progresso Italian style breadcrumbs, put in about 2 tablespoons per pepper, and we're gonna put in about a third again of Kraft Parmesan and Romano cheese. Mix it so that it's even. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put enough inside the pepper to just give it about a half full amount. So you're not gonna pack it too heavy. It will be dry and really unpleasant if you do that. But just about 2 tablespoons per pepper, packing it lightly and making sure that it's even throughout. Now they're stuffed with breadcrumbs. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to turn on the fry pan and put in a little bit of oil so that it starts getting hot. Now here's where it gets funny. We have all of this balsamic, and if we're not going to be careful with it, we could end up wasting it or throwing it away. In this case, we're going to use it to pre-moisten the breadcrumbs on the inside. We're going to take a little bit of water and we're going to cut the balsamic about 50-50 with water. Now that it's a 50-50 water and balsamic blend, we're going to pre-moisten the inside with a little bit of balsamic. Just about a very flat tablespoon should be enough to moisten and get all the breadcrumbs on the inside ready to go. Now that we've stuffed the peppers and we've put a little bit of moisture on the inside with an extra little bit of flavor, we're going to put them into the fry pan so that we can basically just sear them or blacken them on each side. It's going to take a few moments on each side if the oil is hot. The oil is still not that hot, so we're being safe about it. You should grab a set of tongs, and if you have it, they have a tool that's like a screen that you can put over the fry pan to keep little spots of oil that are bubbling from going everywhere. If you have one of those, I would suggest using it for this phase. Now that the peppers have cooked for a little bit, we're now going to turn them to fry the other side. We're now going to take them after they've been cooking for a little bit and put them on the baking sheet to finish in the oven. Now that the peppers are ready to be baked, we're going to place them into a preheated oven to 350 degrees and bake them for approximately 25 to 35 minutes until they're softened and they're moist. So now your guests are about to arrive and you have quite a spread out for them. You have pinwheels. We're ready to start the party. All the hors d'oeuvres and appetizers are out. We have 3 different flavors of pinwheel for you. We have beautiful asparagus frittata, stuffed mushrooms, and a little bit of stuffed Anaheim peppers. The portion cost for a party like this would be about $2.13 per person attending. And They're beautiful, they're vibrant, and with a glass of wine to go along is going to make you the talk of the town. It was a pleasure serving you again and cooking with you, and I'll see you again on Fresh Food Therapy.